Welcome into the Door Report. It is episode 213 on a Wednesday night, March 29th. We are powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors. Family owned and operated for more than 2 decades, Alaco Fine Wood Floors is Nashville and Middle Tennessee's choice for premium quality hardwood floors. As I lose the script here, there we go. Since 1995, Jimmy Alaco should know it by now. And his army of employees have embodied the approach of taking pride in one's craft and providing superior customer service, growing from a one-man shop to a team of 23 professionals who share the founder's passion for quality craftsmanship and customer satisfaction. If you're interested in contacting them, you can find their headquarters at 2505 Winford Avenue in Berry Hill, or give them a call at 615-356-0303. Also, check them out online at alacofinewoodfloors.com. Gentlemen, it's been, I think it's been exactly a week, if I'm not mistaken here. Another Wednesday night episode. We got some baseball to talk about. VandyBoys swept the Magnolia State, had Ole Miss 2 weekends ago, Mississippi State last weekend. So we got to talk a little baseball. But the theme of this episode is basketball season recap. We've had time to sit back and kind of take our notes, do our research on portal guys. I wouldn't put too much stock in our research in the portal guys. We got a lot of questions about those. So don't take our word for those. But we do have some ideas, and we'll talk about the portal entries for Vanderbilt, the exits, and the players they need in. So we'll talk all things Vanderbilt basketball. But gentlemen, the vibes are high for baseball, but all of a sudden, basketball, we may have been right about more things than we even realized after that Alabama game. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer here, but and a lot can still happen. I might change my tune again, but man, it feels like we're talking in a little bit different tune now. But that's what we do for Vanderbilt basketball. It's a roller coaster.
I think I texted our group. I don't know if I texted the full Door Report group message or just the message that me, you, and Trevor have, Billy. But I think I said we may have been more right in the episode where we ripped Jerry apart after the 57-point loss to Alabama and overreacted by calling for his firing midseason. And we apologized for that and corrected that take. But I think we were hitting on some truth in maybe the too critical podcast that we did following that tough loss. I think we were hitting on some things that were happening inside of that locker room, and there were definitely some things going on where players just weren't happy and were looking to get out. And we always talk about winning cures all. Well, it definitely cured the vibe around the program at that time, and not every single time is winning curing whatever's going on during the season. That may just be a Band-Aid. Obviously, this team got hot and they were playing some good ball, but man, you are losing 6 guys to the transfer portal if you
potentially
including Lawrence if Lawrence does decide to go to the NBA draft. That is not what we expected and not what we thought we would be discussing on this season recap, primarily if we would have been recording on Sunday night. So it's been a pretty crazy last 3 days for this Vanderbilt basketball program, and I don't mean crazy in a good way. So I know we'll get more into this, and it's supposed to be a season recap, but it's hard not to combine what you've seen in the recent days when recapping the season, just because it's going to directly impact kind of the trajectory of Jerry Stackhouse in this program.
Yeah, there's so much to get to, and I want to fire a question at you guys later about this era of college basketball, today's world of college basketball, and does Vanderbilt fit right into that? And I know we've got some answers for that, and there may be some excuses for some of the moves as of late to provide. So, but Trevor, I know you were at the baseball game against Lipscomb, and I know, guys, before we do anything, I want to get out there that on Monday we were going to record Monday, but because of the awful tragedy that happened at the Covenant School, we pushed it back a little bit. Trevor, you were there. They had a prayer circle before Vandy and Lipscomb, so obviously it's tough to really focus on anything. But Vanderbilt and Lipscomb, what a gesture from them, and also they had a donation link up on the VandyBoys Twitter site, and they also the proceeds went to the Covenant School Foundation. So I know you were there, Trev. VandyBoys got another win, but on the baseball side of things, it's looking pretty good.
Yeah. I tell you what, boys, the prayer circle, and shout out to Vanderbilt and Lipscomb for doing that. That was awesome to see. Very respectful. They put the names of the of those who lost their lives on the screen. And so it was a super touching moment. You could hear a pin drop in the stands. But as for the baseball team, man, it's so funny. I watch almost every pitch. Billy, I know you watch a lot of baseball. Will has very much said that he box score watches, and I'm over here freaking out.
He had some box score watching to do last weekend.
I had a lot of box score to watch. I will say that.
I was just saying, I'm over here freaking out about the bats, and Will is like, guys, don't worry about it. I think the Vanderbilt bat dilemma, I don't want to say it's dead, but it's pretty. I mean, she's almost 6 feet under. You know what I mean? So it's pretty done for there. They're playing really, really good baseball, man. The bats are hot right now. The pitching is hot. And then, I mean, like you said, Billy swept the Magnolia State, went in and had the reigning national champions come to town and absolutely dusted the floor with them. And then you had Mississippi State, who always wants to complain about scholarships. All I have to say to that is, guys, if you're against disenfranchised people having the opportunity to get a high quality education, and you're against that, and that's the hill you want to stand on, then so be it. I guess we have different morals, but yeah, absolutely wiped the floor with them too. Went to their home field and drubbed them. And so last night they kept it going. Run rule to Lipscomb. I know it was a run rule, but I think there's only like inning left, so I doesn't know if it really counts. But yeah, they had a great bullpen day yesterday. Ryan Ginther, he looked really awesome. But yeah, the bats just keep on rolling, man. Maldonado, Davis, Parker Noland, who maybe has the hottest bat of them all right now. I think he went 0 for last night. Don't quote me on it, but I think he went 0 for last night. But who cares after the weekend he had? I mean, he could go on a little slumber right now. I don't think anybody would care.
And Trevor, you got to be on TV. You got a little TV action, a little TV time as well.
Shout out to. They'll never do this again during the season, I imagine. But finally, the tickets were GA. I got there right as the gates open. 6 p.m. first pitch. Gates open at 4:30. I like to get to baseball games, or I like to watch batting practice. Got there at 4:30. I walked directly behind, and me and Billy during an Ole Miss game in the 8th inning tried to sit behind home plate, and the security guy was like, "You guys got tickets?" And we're like, "Bro, dog, it's the 8th inning. Let us sit over here." So, but I finally got to sit behind home plate. First time I've ever gotten to sit behind home plate in years of going to Hawkins. Yeah, it was awesome. I was totally tapped in. I'm very proud of myself that I didn't flinch at any foul ball that came towards me. I mentally prepared going into the ball game.
Big.
I was like, do not flinch. Show that you've been here before.
Show that you've been here before. A lesser man would have flinched. Good thing you're not a lesser man.
Every time a foul ball came directly back, and I just stood like a stone. I looked at everybody else flinching. I was like, been there, done that, baby.
Billy and Trevor, they cover baseball for the Door Report. I'm just going to say it. I'll get into it and have a lot more opinions as we go, but I have to reference, and I'm shocked you didn't bring it up, the art imitating life with the final score of the third game in the Mississippi State series.
I'll get there, yeah.
I just assumed that would be one of the first things that Trevor referenced, but the 11-7
was poetic.
was just almost
beautiful.
It's almost like a Disney movie the way that played out.
It really was a divine act.
I definitely want to talk more about that. We'll get into baseball. We'll get into our Vanderbilt basketball season recap, and we'll get to your fan comments and questions as well. Before we do, though, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @door_report and Instagram door.report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. All right, let's get to the breaking news. All right, let's start with baseball, guys. We will get to basketball. The beef of this will be basketball, but I want to touch a little bit more. There's so many incredible stats and numbers out of this weekend in Starkville. Will, you mentioned the score of Game 3, 11-7, which was poetic. Game 1, 26-3 in 7 innings. Game 2, 18-5. I mean, just pure domination in Starkville. And speaking of the Magnolia State, Ole Miss and Mississippi State are both 0-6 in SEC play. That has never happened before. They've been playing baseball in the SEC since 1933. So, there's probably a lot of people saying, yeah, these teams are awful, but I think you have to give Vanderbilt credit too for being the team that has dominated both the Mississippi teams here in the past couple of weeks. Guys, I saw a graphic on, I think it was during game 2. They popped up this graphic, or no, it had to be game 3 after 6 games, but Vandy has a plus 63 run differential in the first 6 games, highest by an SEC team since 1992. 84 runs scored in the first 6 games, most since South Carolina in 1996. First SEC team to start 6-0 with every win by at least 3 runs since 1992. So 92, obviously, that's when the SEC expanded to 12 teams. But, I mean, what they're doing is historical right now. I mean, it really is. And I know we said after the Ole Miss game, it's like, okay, let's see how they take it into Starkville. Let's see if they can keep it rolling. Well, they did. 6-0 in the SEC for the first time since 1972. Trevor, no Tim Corbin team has ever started SEC play since SEC play 6-0. So, I mean, that's incredible. They got South Carolina in a few weeks. They're tied for first in the East with South Carolina right now.
Massive series.
Yeah, big series against the Gamecocks in Nashville. But I mean, some of those numbers are ridiculous. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. A Vandy team under Tim Corbin hasn't started 6-0 ever. I mean, that was crazy.
And they've had some historic baseball teams.
Yeah.
And have had a crazy consistency whenever you do think about consistent teams in college baseball. You think about your South Carolinas, your USCs, your Oregon States, Floridas. Vanderbilt's run over the past decade has truly been historic, like something that college baseball really hasn't ever seen. But man, talking about that Mississippi State series, I mean, just Friday alone, final score 26-3. Vanderbilt only left 6 runners on base. Only left 6. That's insane.
Is that good?
I mean, goodness. I mean, everybody got in. Enrique Bradfield, I want to talk about him a little bit too. We kind of harped on his bat, and rightfully so early on. I don't know what his OBP is. I'd imagine it's through the roof, but I believe his batting average is above 280 now, so he's getting close to batting 300. So he's starting to get it going. I mean, man, everything is clicking for this VandyBoys team. Pitching, hitting. I think you have a Golden Spike winner at shortstop and Jonathan Vastine. You have maybe the best defender in all of college baseball in center field in Enrique Bradfield. I mean,
he makes everything look easy.
Everything you want in a baseball team, man, they have right now. Like, there's no, I don't see, and then again, I very well could be biased, but like, I just look at this past weekend and the weekend before. I don't know if I see any weak links in this VandyBoys team right now. I really don't.
Not so far. And especially with Parker Noland. I mean, if he plays like that, and this team down the stretch, when you get to that SEC competition, is looking pretty good. I mean, SEC co-player of the week for Noland, 8 for 15, 2 walks, a double, 3 home runs, 14 RBIs. 5th player in SEC history to hit 2 grand slams in a single game. And he matched the SEC record while breaking the Vandy record with 11 RBIs on Friday night. I mean,
he was 5 away from the
ridiculous.
NCAA single game record in that. The NCAA record for single game was 16 RBIs. He was 5 away.
That's the line. I mean, that's the line in the box score. Will's eyes popped out at the Noland slash line.
The numbers that they were putting up had me actually watching, had me tuning in. This is the time of the year I told you I would start tuning in a little more, because you're actually seeing the team start to develop. You're seeing them start to become, actually, like Trevor said, right now we can't see any issues. I'm sure that during SEC play, we're going to start to see some issues. Yeah. This is when I think the real issues in baseball start to expose themselves, because you kind of are putting your best on best as the series continue to roll on in conference play. So this is when I said I was box score watching before. I think next episode will be the first time. That probably fully will not be the case for me. and I'll probably be a little more opinionated.
Well, I want to give you credit though, right? The first time we started talking baseball, all three of us together here, I guess it was almost a month ago now when the season started getting rolling. You basically gave Vandy fans a message of let's calm down. Let's calm down with the bats. And you were 100% right.
He absolutely was right.
They have 10 players with at least 3 home runs already this season, which is the most in the SEC. They had 9 players with 3 home runs all of last year. So already, and you said this is the time you start realizing what a team might be. Well, they got 10 guys with at least 3 home runs. They didn't even get there last year. So I think you're seeing an offensive shift, and you saw it in the offseason. Obviously Mike Baxter, we've talked about him a lot, but guys, you can tell a difference now with these bats. I don't know what they did within the methods of their program. I did hear they were using wood bats more often, like really close to the start of the season. So I think that might, I heard they changed.
Cool.
Yeah, they changed some of their methods. So, but Will, I want to give you credit for that because I think you hammered that home, and we should say that every year because it happens every year. I mean, we see it happen. Other than last year was, I don't think, it was somewhat of an anomaly. Because
it
of what
absolutely
happened
was an anomaly for a Tim Corbin baseball team.
Right. So I guess you couldn't have said it last year, but most Vanderbilt years, you can say it. Their teams get better and they start hitting better. They start finding a groove. So, Will, credit to you for saying that. And I mean, you were right. Hashtag Will was right.
Will was right. I'm glad I got to say it because I was so wrong during basketball season. It's nice to be correct on at least one sport. It's funny that it's like the one that I kind of am emotionally separated from the most. Like I'm still very, compared to a normal person that's not insane, I am very passionate about Vanderbilt baseball. But compared to my passion for Vanderbilt football and basketball, it's definitely the one that I can take a step back more from. And it's so funny that so often during basketball season, this podcast was quite emotionally fueled, but I watched every single second of that team play and I was wrong so often. And I think just seeing it through the gold lens, even when you are really attempting to take a step back, there's just no way to fake it. It's like you just have to be emotionally uninvested, which is about to become impossible for me. So my takes will become less and less, I would say, potentially correct as I continue to watch more in a way that's almost funny. It's like my mother wins the NCAA bracket challenge that we do as a family every year. Between me, my dad, and brother who watch basketball the entire season, my mom just picks the bracket just however she wants. She always beats us. So it's kind of the same thing here. It's like you guys know all the stats, run through the box score, and I'll be like, yeah, it's just chill. It'll shape out, and that ends up kind of being the right take. So I won't even take credit for it. It was just like, it's what probably everybody was wanting to say to me during that episode in the middle of the basketball season. It's like, just chill. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see how it plays out. And that unfortunately is not played out great. So.
Roles reversed here a little bit.
Maybe if we all step back from Vanderbilt athletics and just did a pod, our takes might be a lot better. we would just have absolutely 110% correct takes all
more
the time.
Accurate, less entertaining.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the TDR value. You get that raw emotion right after a game or the day after a game, and you see that roller coaster. But guys, we have a lot to get to moving into basketball. I mean, you talk about beef. In terms of baseball, they like I mentioned, they beat Lipscomb last night. They host Georgia this weekend. So, man, pretty light start to the SEC schedule. You can't say that very often, but boy, does it heat
Georgia
up
stinks too, by the way, guys.
Yeah. So, but I'm not giving any excuses here, but it has been somewhat of a light start.
Let's not discredit Ole Miss. Let's not discredit Ole Miss just because they were number 3 in the country when Vanderbilt.
They were
defending national champs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that Vanderbilt beat the shit out of them, everybody's like, we all knew they weren't that good. I'm like, I don't know.
They have more scholarships, guys. Of course they're going to win.
And then you turn around, they get swept by Florida as well. So all of a sudden, the Magnolia State, their pride for baseball is not looking too good right now. But
we'll about the state of Mississippi.
We'll get to more baseball, but guys, let's start with basketball. There have been some transfer portal entries as there is every year from a Jerry Stackhouse roster. Malik Dia, Noah Shelby, Miles Studi, Jordan Wright, and Trey Thomas. And Tyrin Lawrence has declared for the draft. He's testing the waters. Scottie Pippen did the same, and he returned. So I think fans are hoping to look forward to that. 4 scholarship spots have opened up, guys. So, boys, there's room on this roster now. I heard Stackhouse has his eye on a good post player in the portal, talking to Lee Fowler a couple of days ago. So, and he's tight with Stack. So, who knows what happens there. But just real quick, guys, not surprised by Malik Dia, right? A little bit.
That might be the most surprising out of the group other than Lawrence.
I didn't see the Malik Dia coming because Malik Dia, I didn't see that happening. Because think about he didn't have an expectation of a ton of playing time as a freshman in my mind, at least. Sitting behind Liam Robbins, coming in alongside Lee Dort, and having QMB on the roster.
Right.
And he actually did break into the rotation. Is the crazy part. He's still transferring out. But granted, he was being used how he didn't want to or whatever. But to me, that one was surprising.
Yeah,
agree,
that was
Trev?
a little bit surprising to me as well. Yeah. And we'll get to the Tyrin Lawrence situation, but other than Tyrin, the Dia was probably the most surprising to me.
Okay, Shelby. Obviously not a surprise. I mean, I remember we had talked to his dad in a space, a couple months ago, and I don't want to say that talking to his dad was reassuring because I think in the moment it might have been, but Shelby, no surprise there.
That's actually one that I kind of knew was going to happen, and we didn't really talk about it, but
it's almost like we were in denial.
No.
Does this mean? I guess it has to that Dort and Shelby are no longer thought of as a package deal.
I think if they didn't leave together, I don't see that being a package.
Dort
has
a real deal role next year. He will be a rotation guy. There might be games to where he starts. He's going to be a 20, 25 minute a game guy.
And the season after that, he's the guy. I mean,
exactly.
He's the centerpiece 5. So, but Shelby is probably one of the only guys that I look at, and that decision is 100% in his situation. I, without a doubt, would have done the same thing. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I would look at that current roster. I would look at the lack of, I understand practice. I understand practice opportunities. Okay, shut the hell up. AI, talking about practice, game opportunities. He got the least opportunities of any scholarship player on that roster to actually play and get live reps in games. And he was coming in given the expectation, I'm sure, in recruiting that would not be the case. And he watched, especially at the beginning of the year, this team struggle to shoot the ball and had a guy with very similar issues, similar to his on the defensive end of the court, very similar stature, that was shooting terribly all year. And continuously, Noah Shelby was just not getting an opportunity for whatever reason from Jerry Stackhouse. So that's the one guy I just had to put out there is I always respect the guy's decision, but Noah Shelby is okay, that is 100%
that's
understandable.
Right.
A better situation for him because I don't understand that from Stack. He basically just pushed him to the end of the bench and pushed him out of the program. Yeah,
that was confusing. I mean, that you look at Shelby and his trajectory, he played a good amount the first kind of quarter of the season, and then a little bit as you started SEC play, but that final stretch of the season, he didn't see the floor. So that, kind of a telltale sign of what might happen, and we figured out what happened. Shelby transferred out. All right, Jordan Wright. This is the big one. And I tweeted this out. We got a lot of interaction from that tweet, by the way. I didn't expect it. But Jordan Wright, guys, I think throughout the season, we had sort of chronicled his, I don't know about if you could say relationship with Stack, but, kind of some of the bickering and some of the obvious on-court maybe disputes. And you could just sort of tell. You could tell he was coming off the bench and, hearsay, you hear things. And it didn't feel good, but at the same time, I think back to that Kentucky post-game interview with Coach Stackhouse, and the guy, he starts crying. I mean, he he starts crying and he's talking about Jordan and the journey they've been on. And I thought in the moment, okay, there's no way Jordan's leaving. I mean, that's in the moment, that was my thought, but it could have been more of a, this is almost our time together is coming to an end. And it's been quite the journey, and maybe Jordan had already made his mind up. I don't know. There's so many things we don't know, but I will say, guys, I was caught off guard by this because, I'm not saying I expected him 100% to come back, but at the same time, you look at him and you say, okay, he has a chance to play one more year at another Division I school, potentially get paid. You don't blame the kid. So I'm interested. Will, where are you at on Jordan Wright here?
He's like a lot of guys on this list. It's not that it's shocking or anything. It's just, it's unexpected, which I know are relatively synonyms, but it's not that, like, I saw Jordan Wright was entering the transfer portal and some other names as well that we're about to get to. And it wasn't like I went, what the hell? Like, no way. It was more like, I didn't expect that. That's just not, that was not in my mind.
It's like, Jordan it's Wright one thing to envision it, but then it actually happens. And it's like,
I just expected, as I was reading that, I almost expected that to be him announcing that he was done playing basketball, that like he was retiring because of the back issues or whatever. And he's entering the grad transfer portal. And to me, that's just surprising because he has a place here at Vanderbilt. He'd had the internship that they always talk about on ESPN every single time. He's wanting to do sports management, be a GM.
He was big with the Anchor Collective too.
So Collective.
It's just surprising. And you're giving up a graduate, basically a free graduate year and graduate degree from Vanderbilt University.
That's rare.
Maybe he's moving back home. Maybe he wants to play closer to home. That's the part that I think gets taken out of this equation a lot of the time when it's not a guy that's probably going to be playing professional basketball. And I don't think Jordan Wright thinks he's going to be playing in the NBA. I could be wrong, but these are just like, they're making a life decision sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's just like, I'm done here, like whatever relationships, and we don't really know. And that's the weird part about this is like everything that we had seen publicly would have never expected Jordan Wright to leave and enter the grad transfer portal. And Trevor, I see you nodding. I don't think that any of us on this podcast expected Jordan to leave, but I did message him. He posted it on Instagram and said, good luck wherever you land. Like, whatever. And he said, thanks for always, supporting.
What a guy, by the way.
Podcast. Yeah. So just wanted to say that, like, obviously he was aware of what was going on here with the pod and everything. And he immediately said that as a thank you. So, but good luck. I do want to put that in here, like in the middle. I always like to remind at a point, it's like, good luck to all these guys where they land. Like I never root for these guys to do poorly unless they exit in some kind of, bad way. But it is kind of weird. Man. Like Jordan Wright was kind of what we expected to potentially be an anchor of this team next season. Same thing with some other guys on this list, but it's just the whole outlook for next season is turned on its head, a complete 180, as Michael Scott would say. How the turns have tabled.
and Will, that's very much where I am at with Jordan. I said earlier, whenever we were discussing, I was like, Dia was my most shocking. Now that I think about it, he still probably is, but this Jordan one sort of took me.
It's puzzling.
Because I totally agree with what Will says. Here's my thing. We don't know what happened in the exit interviews. There have been rumors, there have been murmurs. But ultimately, we don't know. We don't have that sort of insider access. But like Will said, whenever you were looking to the 2023-2024 team, Jordan Wright, and we'll get to Ty, but Jordan Wright was going to be a staple of this basketball team. He was going to be going into this season at SEC Media Days. Jerry brought Jordan and was like, hey, I've told him before that it wasn't his time to be the guy. But I've told him now, like, hey, now's your time to be the guy. And I know we've addressed the back issues. He was not 100% all year long. That is incredibly evident. It is puzzling to me because, don't get me wrong, there are other basketball programs that are light years ahead of Vanderbilt. I just don't know and we'll find out. We'll see what his role is at what other school he chooses to go to. I just don't know what his role, if his role is going to be any better at these other schools than it would have been at Vanderbilt. You're in a system that you know, with a coach who you know, with a staff that you know, with guys who you know you are in a familiar situation to where you are going to be the guy. There's no ifs, there's no question marks. Like, there's no learning new things. Like, it's, you know what you have to do. And I don't know how he's going to get that anywhere else. Like, I don't know where else someone like Jordan Wright is going to go. And with his sort of skill set, with his sort of play style, with the guys, with the teams who are looking for someone like him to fill a roster spot, I just don't know where he's going to get that at anywhere other than Vanderbilt. So that is where I'm at.
There are certain guys that transfer that immediately your thought is more, and I don't mean this how it's going to come off, but I'm just going to say it, is like there's some guys, and we're about to get to another name, that transfer and you say, where the hell are they going to go? Like,
that's exactly how I felt about it.
And I love Jordan Wright. I think he's been a part of a very tough stretch of Vanderbilt basketball and stuck through it. But who's going to want a guy with 1 year of eligibility left that's going to take up a scholarship that without a doubt is going to miss time due to injury? And he's a 1 year rental, and he's going to miss time with an injury. Like, he's not going to upgrade programs. And maybe that's not his goal. Maybe he's looking for a bigger role. I just don't see that. And like I said, this one feels like we just don't have some type of information around it. So there's something missing there in this decision that we don't know.
Well, and that's why I was a little surprised, right, initially, because he was so entrenched in the community. He did a lot of good at Vanderbilt. The journey was unbelievable. I mean, and maybe it was a situation where he said, I've done what I can do at Vanderbilt. I'm looking to potentially move closer to home. Who knows? But I'm going to throw this out there. LSU, keep an eye on them. Just keep an eye on them, because I think that could be, he's from Baton Rouge. So that's obviously could be an option there. But again, we don't know. And we never like to speculate too much here. We just want to provide opinions, info on these guys. One more guy, Trey Thomas. Good old Trey Thomas has entered the portal. And, it's interesting, guys, when you talk about Trey, he made a lot of really big shots at Vanderbilt. And, he did a lot of good. But at the same time, I think down the stretch of this season, and we talked about it. We talked about when he hits shots, his defense almost looks better. Like, it does. You don't think about the defense as much. But when he's not hitting shots, the defense becomes sort of a lot more glaring issue. So I'll say this about Trey. Like I said, I think he hit a lot of big shots. Not surprised by the decision to transfer. I wouldn't say I expected it, because I thought, and we talked about it being similar to a Mike Wright situation where, he's staying, but fans may not quite be so pleased with that. So, it's kind of that type of situation. But again, Trey Thomas did a lot of good, but I think this is another situation, Will, where good for him. Go see what else works for him, whether it's a mid-major or whatever. But good for him. Go play. Go find a good situation, and good luck. I mean, the conundrum is done with Trey Thomas in terms of fans and their perception of him. But not to bash the guy, I thought he hit a lot of big shots and big moments that helped this team win this year. So it's sort of, you get both sides, with Trey Thomas.
Look, the reality is Trey Thomas is not and was never a high-level power conference basketball player. He physically is not. He's too small. He's a liability on defense. He's going to transfer to a mid-major. I mean, he will go to the level of basketball that he is built for. And that sounds really, really harsh, but that's real. Like, this is one of those that I don't really understand. Unless there was a conversation with Jerry Stackhouse that sounded very similar to that, maybe a little bit more sensitive on the delivery. This one feels like kind of a natural correction. I would say. Trey Thomas is a great shooter, and he's going to put up great numbers if he transfers to a mid-major level program. And that's about as harsh as I'm going to be on one of these transfers, but this is one that I bit my tongue a lot when he was still part of the roster, but I mean, everyone could see it. That was the guy that was getting minutes over Noah Shelby that made me want to rip my hair out of my head, that I just still don't understand. And now with 3 years of eligibility remaining, I believe now Trey Thomas is gone as well. So Jerry Stackhouse's decision to play him over Noah Shelby makes even less sense now, and he's driven away both of the best shooters on this roster. So there we go.
Saying Trey Thomas has 3 years of eligibility left, like it, I don't have a lot of like horsepower in my head, but like that makes my head hurt. Like thinking that like he somehow like still has 3 years of basketball.
Does he actually?
left.
I think so. It's what it says on 24/7.
Good.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
This is, but yeah, I mean, Billy, I think the Mike Wright analogy was a great analogy. Kudos to him, man. Yeah. I think this is a lot like I'm trying not to giggle. I think this is a lot like the Miles Studi situation too, to where like it works out it's best for both parties involved. Like it's best for Vanderbilt to have this open roster spot. And Trey, I mean, call it what it is, bud. Like you're not like a Power 6 basketball player. So yeah, go to a mid-major, man. Put up some big numbers, have fun playing ball. Get you a NIL collective and become somebody's sharpshooter.
And what we're saying may sound harsh, and I know, like Trevor, we're trying to kind of dance around it just a little bit, but
because I've been very critical of Trey Thomas. I'm trying to reel it back.
This isn't critical. This isn't a criticism. This is just facts. Is his other offers coming out of high school were Yale, Incarnate Word, UMass, Niagara, and Rice, and Vanderbilt. So he was not a Power 6 basketball player. I mean, that was a lot of the guys.
That's a fact. Yeah.
That was a fact. And so now he's going to transfer to the level of those other offers. And that's part of the problem as to why this team went winless in SEC play, is they didn't have the level of talent that was required to win conference games at the SEC level.
And the recruiting, guys, we are seeing sort of you see the sort of a cliff, rocks going down a cliff after all the damage. The lack of recruiting success is starting to bite Vanderbilt, unironically now. Will, you just mentioned it, Trey Thomas, a guy, and you see it indirectly in a lot of ways. You know, you've seen, it feels like half of every recruiting class from Stackhouse ends up transferring. You know, I did some research, guys. 17 players have entered the portal under Jerry Stackhouse. 17 players. That's 4 guys, over 4 guys per average per year. So, and there's probably programs that are up there. There's probably programs that have more in the past 4 years, but the fact that it's been under one coach, one staff, not the same staff. You've had some guys come in and out there, but you know, you look at the past 4 years, and that's sort of what you think about in the Stackhouse era. You think about some of the carnage, and yes, this is the world of college basketball, but it's different when you don't have, like, you're not making the tournament, right? Like, you can say that for a team like K-State. Look at them. They're having success getting guys in the portal and keeping that, you know, that culture together. I mean, Jerome Tang, this is his first year, and he grabbed a bunch of guys from the portal, and boom, they're in the Elite Eight. So yes, that's the era of college basketball. And I think with Stackhouse, this is probably the right decision for him and his staff, especially heading into year 5, where it is a win now situation. And there was a tweet from Matthew Fisher Davis. I don't think this is totally wrong either. It was a joke, but he said Jerry Stackhouse might be acting like Deion Sanders with the, you know, I'm bringing my own luggage. It's Louis. There might be some truth to that, guys. I think Stackhouse knows, and his staff, that they have to win in year 5, and it's tournament or bust. And they know that, and they're going to bring in guys. Now, whether they can win with those guys, that's another question, but that's where we're at with this program. The lack of recruiting success early on, those first couple of years, has come back to bite them a little bit, Will.
Yeah, this is, you hit on it. I'm glad you said it. It's why I don't think we have been like the sky is falling yet. I mean, you see this number of transfers out, okay?
Right.
And
Let's relax. Yeah.
Yeah. Most programs would immediately say, oh, like this next year's going to be a disaster. Next year's going to be a nightmare. And it might be, there might not be an ultimate plan. This might not be that situation. But that might also be true. Jerry Stackhouse may be clearing out roster spots that would otherwise have not been available to fill this roster with a team that can actually make the NCAA tournament.
That's a very real point. Yeah.
Not just be a bubble team. And he kind of sees the talent level that's there right now, and he's kind of, clearing it out. And we'll see, because right now that it's been a little quiet in the transfer portal. Stack has had success in the transfer portal. He's had a lot of guys leave, like you said, and he's had some misses, but he's also brought in talent. Ezra Mignon, Liam Robbins, Rodney Chapman. Those are key contributors.
Right. Yeah.
To this roster. If he can do that with 3 guys versus, 1 or 2, this roster could look better, even with all of these transfers out. So I'm not ready to, ring the alarm and sound the panic or hit the panic button yet. But unless there's some names that start popping up with a little more weight to them that are potentially going to be playing in the black and gold next year, there has to be some pretty aggressive moves made this offseason by Jerry and the rest of the staff.
Yeah.
And when you see those names pop up that were going to be key contributors, it's also a lot in the air having Tyrin Lawrence just hanging kind of up in the air of where is he going to fall in the NBA draft scout process, because that's going to either be Tyrin Lawrence is your main guy next year and he's going to be your leading scorer for a majority of the season in almost every single game, or he's not even going to be on the roster. And right now you're kind of sitting in that middle zone. Is he going to be Scottie Pippen Jr. 2.0 and go through that process and ultimately decide to come back? I'm praying to God that is the case. But he could potentially be gone next year, and that leaves a pretty big scoring hole. When your leading returning scorer is Ezra Mignon at point guard, that is definitely not a guy that you would describe as a scoring offensive point guard.
You took the words out of my mouth. Well, I was just about to get to Tyrin, and we'll get to more. There's so much to get to, but with Tyrin, it's going to be jumbled, but stick with us, guys. Tyrin Lawrence, is he an NBA player? That I'll throw that out there. I think down the road, yes. And hell, guys, I mean, I think he could succeed in the G League if he stuck with this process and maybe signed a contract going undrafted. But if he's not hearing from scouts that he's a first or second round pick, he's probably coming back to Vanderbilt. And I think this is a good move. I think as a player, you need to hear that from scouts, and Tyrin gets to hear that a year earlier. Say he didn't do this, he gets to look at a scout can look at his game and say, all right, here's where you can improve here. Get your shot right. We saw your percentage, get that up 6, 7, 8 points. You're in the NBA. Maybe that's what they're going to tell him. And if he agrees with it, he says, okay, I'm coming back. We saw the success Scottie had after that year of testing the waters. And man, was that a jolt for the program to hear Scottie's coming back, right? I mean, Scottie Pippen's back. Oh my gosh. I mean, this team has a chance. And so I think that there's that potential with Tyrin. So is he an NBA player now? I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I mean, my gut says no, not yet, but boy, can he? I mean, can he be in the future? Yes. So it's an interesting deal. Don't put too much stock into it, fans. I mean, you can look at Tyrin and immediately say, oh, he's gone now too. You got 6 guys, but it's not. Let's wait and see. And let's ride this wave of the Tyrin Lawrence draft process, and we'll see where it goes. So, but any other on Tyrin? I know we got a lot to get to. Will, I thought those were great points, but Trevor, do you see him potentially being an NBA guy?
I totally agree, and I'm right there in the boat with you guys that we are maintaining the sky is not falling attitude. I will say if Tyrin does declare for the draft, I very much will be in a sky is falling mode. I mean, he's the guy next year. He's your leading scorer. He's your team leader. He's your everything. He is Vanderbilt basketball for 2023 through 2024. Like, he's your guy. He's your Scottie Pippen. If he does declare, I will be in sky is falling mode. I don't really care who Jerry would get in the portal. Like, I'd be freaking out.
That's a guy you have to have.
You have
Every other guy is replaceable. What
That is
Tyron does is
except for him.
irreplaceable in the portal.
That is exactly where I stand. Like, everybody who's announced they're leaving, I'm like, okay, like, that sucks, but like, I get it. And like, I wish Shelby would have stayed, but like, just because of his upside. But I'm like, hey, dude, if I were you, I get it. But if if he leaves, I'll be. But too, like, I'm trying to find online his like NBA draft projections. There's nothing up yet. He's not really in any mock drafts at all. Do I think he is an NBA player? Yeah, I think eventually. I think probably after another year he is. Could he be right now? I don't think so. But then again, I'm not an NBA scout. But like, I'd hate to see him go. But man, he's got a little kid. And if somebody says like, hey, we think we can get you in like the late second, then like I'd be devastated, but I'd be
That's
like,
what
hey man,
scares
like,
Vandy fans. Yeah.
you got, like, I don't know, you got a kid to feed. Like, I'd do it. You know what I mean? But like, I would hate. Everybody else is replaceable. Tyrin Lawrence is not replaceable.
I'd be really surprised if he goes. I think he wouldn't leave unless he got a first round grade, because those second round NBA picks are non-guaranteed contracts.
Those are iffy. Yeah.
So a lot of the guys are going through the process, seeing kind of even if they're on the radar. I would be really surprised, because I think Tyron, with another year playing how he did at the end of this season, is no doubt going to be at least one of the guys drafted in the second that a team has a clear plan for him. And doesn't just kind of pick him as a developmental guy. But right now, it's hard for me to see him not suiting up in the G League if he makes that decision next year.
I think too, and this is the last thing I'll say about Tyron. The impact that Tyron could have by announcing that he's coming back to Vanderbilt is very similar to the impact that CJ Taylor saying he's not entering the transfer portal was for Vandy football. Some guy who you like, my God, he's got some star power. And if you can get a guy like him back, even with everybody who's leaving, even with who you might bring in the portal, if you just see him on the roster next year, you're like, you think in your mind, you're like, dang, like, we could do some damage. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's one of those guys that he almost acts as like three players, the way he does so many things well. He can easily, we talked about his quiet performances, his quiet 24 points almost every night. And that's just what he is. He's a consistent bucket for you. And he's kind of a safety valve. And boy, do they need that. They need that. And we're going to get into what the roster looks like next year, but let's talk about this past season and the roller coaster ride that it was. Let's get into it, guys. We're going to give a grade, but real quick, in one word, how would you describe this season? Will, I'll start with you. I have mine. Hell, we might all have the same one, but one word to describe this past Vanderbilt basketball season.
So in the state of Tennessee, and especially here locally, I won't use one word because it's too simple, because I want to say roller coaster. And I know that's what everybody's going to say. But I feel that this basketball season overall needs a better description. So if anyone here has ever been to the Wilson County Fair, I'm sure that it travels amongst multiple fairs here. This Vanderbilt basketball season felt specifically to me like the Crazy Mouse roller coaster, like very janky, very hard turns. I don't think anybody's ever gotten on the Crazy Mouse Fair roller coaster and been like, that was a fun roller coaster. You come out, you're like, that was definitely a roller coaster, and I'm beaten up and bruised from this hard metal bar and metal seat that was keeping me here, and this very uncomfortable jolting from this janky 40-year-old ride that travels on a truck. That's what this Vanderbilt basketball season felt like. There were moments of existential joy as you felt that things were deteriorating within this program, but they were winning. And so it was really hard to describe the ups and downs, because it felt like the overall trajectory this season was kind of down outside of like a 10-game stretch, which sounds dumb because 10 games is like a third of the season, but every other part of this season was not very enjoyable. not very comfortable, a lot of ups and downs. So roller coaster is the simple one-word answer, but specifically like a janky Wilson County Fair roller coaster is how I would describe it.
Trevor.
That is, I mean, that was pretty perfect. That was pretty spot on. Even using the Wilson County Fair roller coaster analogy. I mean, if I had to
at that fair,
if I had to give one word, demented. I don't. It was such a that's gotta be my word. This season. This season was demented. That is my word to describe Vanderbilt's basketball season. Yeah, there were parts of it that really freaking sucked, and there were parts of it that it was some of the most fun that were euphoric. Like some of the moments like were the most fun I've had at Memorial Gym in ages. I mean, overall, it as much fun as there was, like it was a really frustrating season because of how you started and then you get some momentum going and you're like, oh my God, like we could get there, like we could get the tournament. And then to have it like wrongfully like snatched from your hands is just like, man, I mean, it just feels brutal. But even though this team did not make the tournament, I will say, I saw a lot of people say this online and I very, very much agree. I think history will shine kindly on this Vanderbilt basketball team as possible. And again, I could be totally wrong based on what happens next year, but I think history will shine favorably upon this basketball team as like the team that got Vanderbilt basketball back on track, like the team that brought Memorial Magic back, the team that brought those crazed, raucous Memorial Maniac vibes in that gym back that we haven't seen in years. I think a lot of Vanderbilt fans, a lot of like ones like us, if the basketball team does progress like we hope it does, we'll look back on this team and be like, yeah, that was the start of something.
Yeah. All right. For me, it's unexplainable. I mean, it is unexplainable that this season. So guys, you start with a loss to Memphis in the non-conference, and you continue the non-conference with a loss to Grambling, a loss to Southern Miss, a loss to VCU, where Stackhouse, it looked like he got arrested, but that was a Vanderbilt cop who ushered him out. But guys, it was unexplainable. I mean, I wanted to go positive, and that can be positive or negative, but I do agree with Trevor in that this train was off the tracks. I mean, this train was off the tracks and somehow, some way found a way back on the tracks and back in the right path. And they got it. They got some wins done. I mean, they got some wins under their belt that we never thought were possible. But at the same time, the NIT run was almost a little, microcosm of the season where you have some excitement, but at the end of the day, you don't get the real job done of making the tournament. You don't do what you have to do to get into the tournament. And they just couldn't. They couldn't get over that next step. They couldn't get up to the first floor. So I'll say unexplainable. I mean, it's hard to talk about because you have right. Will, you said those 10 games where it's not just 10 games. Like that's a third of the season. But at the same time, you saw the stretch of the season, and then, you didn't get in the tournament and then the NIT. So it's, man, we had a good conversation just in the past few minutes, but I can't stop laughing. But no, guys, we got a lot of fan comments. We're going to get to our grades, but any other final comments on this past Vanderbilt season that we just witnessed?
Quite a few. I really hope you leave in the part that I know you're going to edit out, because I've been really trying to hold it down while you were giving your one word for this basketball season. I could see in Trevor's eyes that he was as well. The basketball. My last thought was given in the part that Billy's going to edit out. So,
Trevor, any last thoughts?
Trevor.
I mean, it's I'm like thinking back about like the football season recaps whenever we gave out our grades, and I feel like it was pretty like clear cut and concise, like given like my standards. But I mean, for this basketball season, I mean, it was awesome and it was terrible, and I hated Jerry Stackhouse, and I swore that I was only going to watch Vanderbilt basketball so that they lose, so that he might get fired by the end of February, and then I found myself a memorial for almost the rest of the season. So I don't know. I feel manic. It makes me feel manic. Like
Tough to describe.
I feel like I'm
it
in,
really
like,
makes
a
me feel like I'm
toxic,
crazy.
manipulative relationship. It's like the perfect encapsulation of just being a Vanderbilt fan in one season is how I would describe this basketball season. It's just perfectly captured in a microcosm.
If somebody ever asks you, any Vandy fan listening, if somebody ever asks you, what's it like being a Vanderbilt fan? Describe this season. Just basically show them highlights of the Grambling State loss, and then show the highlights of the Auburn game, and be like, this is the emotional roller coaster that fans went through. So literally,
everything, the injury, like even the injury to Liam Robbins as you're on a win streak, and then you beat Kentucky in Rupp in the game when Liam Robbins is out for the rest of the season due to an injury he has during that game. Like that is a range of emotions being felt in one game of like, you just lost your superstar center, best player on the team, like one of the best defenders, probably the best defender in the conference, but you also just beat Kentucky in Rupp for the first time since what? It was a long time. I know
2007.
Since 2007 so you had all that happen in one game, and that can just be spread out through the entire season. Is the moment you felt you had a read on this team, you were wrong. Whether it was positive or negative, whatever you thought, you were wrong. At least I was.
Man, let's get to grades. We gave out grades after the football season, and we're gonna grade the basketball season. And I'll start. I have mine right now, and it's so hard. It's hard to grade because you look at the success and you go, man, you got to give this an A. I mean, they brought Memorial Magic back. I mean, they did so many good things, but at the same time, they didn't get the job done, and they didn't quite take that step that a lot of fans were expecting. So for me, I was thinking about a C, but I'm going to put them in the B range and give this a B minus. I'm giving this season a B minus because they did bring the Magic back. They brought back so many passionate old school Vanderbilt fans that love going to Memorial, and they wanted a reason to go back, and they finally had a reason. The 5-game winning streak, and the way they play, their style of play, and the grit, we're never dead, we're never out of it attitude. And so for me, I look at the positives and I go, man, I can't go C because of the fact that they emotionally brought back a lot of Vandy fans. And I've heard this firsthand from a lot of Vanderbilt fans saying, look, I'm in. I'm back in. I'm excited for next year. But at the same time, I couldn't go higher than a B minus just because of the disappointment, the disappointing results, and the overall, shock of not getting into the tournament, whether it was a real shock or not. And then you lose in the NIT quarterfinals for the second straight year. You couldn't win that big one. You got it at home this year. They lost on the road last year, and I told myself after that Xavier loss on the road last year and said, if Vandy gets a home game in the NIT quarterfinals, they're going to win. They're going to win it. They're going to find a way to win, but they couldn't. They couldn't get over that edge. So for me, if they win that UAB game and get to Vegas and maybe do some damage there, that could be in the B range just because of how they finished the whole season. But for me, I go B minus just because of some of that disappointment. But they're in the B range because of some of the magic that was brought back, and the jolt of energy that a lot of fans got and needed desperately. So, well, I'll go B minus. I'm interested to see where y'all go.
I'm pretty similar to you, I think, in my train of thought. I'm going with the C plus. You gave a B minus. I'll go with the C plus. But I think that you're just on the other side a little bit of where I was. And I think maybe my expectations going into the year were a little bit higher than yours. I just thought Ezra Mignon and Liam Robbins and Tyrin and Miles, that they were just, and Jordan Wright, were just going to be kind of almost truly bringing back Vanderbilt basketball of old. I thought this team would be on the edge, like the others receiving votes in the top 25. And they just didn't come out and play that way. And they kind of hit their stride for a little bit in that 10-11 game stretch that we talked about. But ultimately, it wasn't enough. So I'm even a little hesitant to give it the C+. And not because they didn't do all the things that you guys have hit on. They brought back Memorial Magic, the buzzer beater against Tennessee, against Auburn. Those were incredible moments. And I was lucky enough to be there with a great view of the buzzer beater by Mignon against Auburn. They beat Kentucky and Rupp. Like, all those are great things. But ultimately, I think you said this team will be remembered as the team that brought back Memorial Magic. And I think that is true in more of like a micro perspective on this program. I think ultimately in 20 years, I mean, this team is just another NIT team. 6 guys transferred out afterwards. You're not, and I know that shouldn't really factor into the grade, but I'm giving in a recap of a season. But the expectation for me was for this team to be a legitimate tournament team, like a legitimate, at least bubble team. And by the committee standards, they simply weren't. So that's why I was even a little bit lenient, I would say. But I'll go with a C+. Billy, you went B-. Trevor, where do you fall?
I'm gonna give this team not a C+, but I'll give them a C. I'm right there with you, Will. At the start of the season, I said that this team was a tournament or bust team. I reeled back on that a little bit during the season, although I totally agree. I think they should have been a tournament team. I think at the end of the season, they were a tournament team. That why they didn't get in is a whole nother story that we've hashed out a dozen which times. And every single time I think about it, it still makes me angry. But I'm going to give them a C because I do agree they made some big strides. The Tennessee game, bringing back Memorial Magic, beating Kentucky twice, Auburn, Mississippi State, sweeping Florida. They made some huge strides as a program, but they also missed some layups. Like, if this is a math test, they're acing some like algebra 2 questions, but then like there's some like 4 + 3 that they just botched. And so, yeah, I think of the Southern Miss game. I think of the Grambling State. I think of VCU. I think of LSU. I think
The
those
LSU
are.
one.
I mean, there's.
That's like 2 + 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean this team made great strides, but they also missed the mark really bad in a lot of games. Where I think they made up some ground is, I think, at the end of the season, like we've discussed, they made some huge strides. They got hot at the end when it really matters. But in the end, they came up short. I don't think C is necessarily a bad grade. Like, it's obviously not like an A, which is excellent, but it's not like a D either, or an F. Like, you're still passing, but it's like you're just kind of like, if you got a C, you're like, well, it's not an F, but you're kind of like, eh. Like, you know what I mean? You're like,
if this season would have happened last year, this would have been like a B+. If this exact season would have happened last season. And I think that's where we're sitting at, is like, overall, it wasn't a step backwards. And so that's why a C, like, I get what you're saying, is that doesn't mean you were just like, meh, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like you didn't exceed average expectations of the talent on this roster, of like what you would see as before the season. This season kind of goes meh. In my opinion, with the talent that was on the roster, a meh season with this talent would be an NIT berth and winning a game or 2 in the NIT. That would have been a meh season, with the potential that the combo of all that talent actually meshing together and playing to the best of their abilities would have been an NCAA tournament run, winning a game too.
Yeah.
So those are very different ends of the spectrum.
I think too, and like another thing is, like, if before the season started, if you told us, you're like, here's Vanderbilt's final record, they made it to the NIT, this is what happened. You don't tell us who we beat or who we lost to. I think most Vanderbilt fans would be like, yo, that sucks. Like, they should have been like, this is not acceptable given like the progress that we have. But whenever you break it down and you're like, yeah, they had some bad losses, but man, a historic win against Tennessee on a buzzer beater, beating Kentucky twice, like, then it sort of softens the blow a little bit. You know what I mean? So it just, I mean, it's hard to put your thumb on it because I want to say that this season was a B. Like, I want to say that this was a good season, but like, I just, because whenever I think about the wins individually, I'm like, man, those are some great wins, but like collectively as a whole, like a whole grade for the season, like, I want more. I think all Vanderbilt fans want more. Like, I don't know if anybody is satisfied with this season.
You can't, the LSU loss in the middle of the stretch that we are talking about. So the middle of the best basketball that was played by this team. That was the game that loss specifically. I know it was on the road, but it is still in the middle of the best stretch of basketball you're playing the worst team in the conference. And you come out and you don't just get beaten, you get beaten badly by that LSU team. LSU pretty much controlled the game, at least the entire second half. So that's just one of those, when we describe the season as a roller coaster and demented, is that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't compute. That's the 4+3 on the 4+3 question that you get wrong on the Cal 3 final exam.
After this test, for like a teacher would be like, man, is this person smart, or are they like, is this a fluke?
They would be like, did they cheat? Like, what it, like, if you got 5 complex calculus questions in a row, right? And then on the exam, the professor is going to be like, hey, I'm going to give you a break after these 5 really tough questions. What's 10 plus 12? And you're like, 4. They're going to be like, what in God's name are you doing? You know what I mean? They're like,
that's almost kind of like what we were saying, where I think we were hitting on some things that game was like a signal that, yes, the winning is kind of hiding, but clearly there's something going on. I don't know what it is. We still don't know what it is, and we will never know what it is. But that many guys don't transfer off of a team that had relatively positive momentum at the end of the season. That many guys don't leave unless there were some issues. And whatever those issues were and whatever direction they were coming from is up in the air. But something was going on that wasn't right in that locker room. And teams that are kind of very focused, everything's moving in the right direction. I just don't think they dropped that game to LSU midweek. I know that's easy looking back to say now, but 5 guys are gone from that roster. So something is going on.
Yeah, I mean, every game you really couldn't predict. I mean, we tried to make predictions for games, but we gave up and basically said we're done predicting. Like we don't know what's going to happen.
I think it was the Auburn game that. Yeah, was it the Auburn games where you were like, we have no freaking
we were like,
clue.
we don't know. Yeah, and we didn't make predictions for Mississippi State or LSU because we didn't know. We never knew what this team was going to come with. So. There's the grade.
I made a prediction
for LSU.
Quite a prediction.
For all of us.
Will got dragged on VandySports.com for it.
My dream.
Oh,
they dedicated an entire forum to our boy Will.
But that's
if anybody from there is listening, I'm not. What is
I called you like a financial analyst.
I am a financial analyst. It's whatever they called me that was like, I'm not a financial advisor. Is what
financial advisor. Yeah,
a financial advisor is like a salesman. That is not what I do.
Money manager.
That is not what I do.
Respect on his job.
I did IB U.S. stock risk management, and now I do corporate finance and prepare financial statements. I'm not a fucking personal advisor.
Flex on him, King.
Jesus Christ.
I love it. All right, guys, let's get to next season just a little bit here. Taking a look at next year's starting 5, Ezra Benyon is the point guard. If Tyrin Lawrence comes back, he'll be the 2. At the 3, it's most likely where we stand right now, either Colin Smith or a portal guy. The 4, maybe a portal guy. The 5, maybe a portal guy. Is it QMB? Is it Lee Dort? You've also got Paul Lewis. You've got Isaiah West, Roberts, and Lang, the other freshman. So, man, we don't know. And with this team right now, they would not be a very good team. I don't think. But obviously, that's not where they would be at. They're likely going to bring in 4 guys from the transfer portal, and you know, I think they brought in a walk-on, but that's not a scholarship spot, obviously. So they've got 4 open scholarship spots. But looking ahead to next season, guys, it's hard to project because we don't know who's going to be brought in. And even when guys are brought in, we don't know what to expect from those guys. So it's going to be yet another Vanderbilt basketball season where we don't know. And we have no touch on the season, no touch on the program. It's probably going to be another roller coaster ride. But I will say, if Stackhouse brings in top level, top of the end transfers, then the expectations go up, and their expectations are already there, right? Like the expectations haven't. I don't think they've slipped, and we got a question about that. But looking ahead to next season, guys, would you agree? Mannion, Lawrence at the 2, Colin Smith might end up starting, by the way, too, at the 3, and then
I think he should.
He will.
Yeah,
I think he should. He's totally earned it.
Mannion, Lawrence, and Smith. And then does QMB start? Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. You bring in a couple portal big guys. You bring in a couple guards for depth, and that's your team, I think. I mean, so looking ahead to next season, we don't know.
If Tyrin Lawrence comes back, if Tyrin Lawrence comes back, and I don't even have to get like a dominant 5, but if you can bring me in a competence too low, but if you bring me in a decent 5 with the backcourt of Ty and Ezra, then let's run it. I feel very, very confident. I really do. If you bring back Tyrin Lawrence, I feel really, really good.
Agreed.
Yeah, this all comes down to Tyrin Lawrence. I mean, any type of preview that or anything we do, depending on that decision, because Ezra Mannion and Tyrin Lawrence and Colin Smith, and then Lee Dort and QMB, that's a core you can work with. That's a core. And Paul Lewis coming off the bench as a guard that showed some flashes. That is a core you can work with. Bring in transfers to fill some holes. If Tyrin Lawrence is not there, that means that Colin Smith is probably going to have to be the primary offensive guy as a sophomore, and he showed flashes, but I'm not sure that Colin Smith is ready to carry the weight of this Vanderbilt offense completely on his shoulders, and that's what he would kind of be forced to do unless they had some insane transfer that you know we haven't heard about, because most of these guys in the transfer portal, let's face it, they're probably going to be relatively role players. Now Liam Robbins, of course, and Ezra have turned out to be incredible players, but they didn't make an immediate impact, you know, coming out of the gates, just playing their best ball. It took some time, you know, for them to ingratiate themselves into the program and into the offensive system. So you're not going to just have this plug and play guy that's going to drop 15 to 20 points a game. And that's what Tyrin Lawrence is guaranteed to provide next season. And without knowing his status, it's pretty impossible to know what to expect.
Yeah, there's going to be pressure on Tyrin Lawrence and Ezra to you know, hold up their end of the bargain, but it's almost a different level of pressure for the transfers coming in, because if you're Stackhouse, you're saying you're bringing those guys in and asking them to perform at a high level in the SEC and hold up their end of the bargain and bring them in and say, guys, you've got to perform or else we're not winning. So there is a whole different type of pressure on those transfer guys coming in. And that brings us into the fan comments and questions. We start with the Admiral. If Tyrin doesn't return, 59 out of 72 points per game is gone. Thoughts on who will step up? And are we keeping the same expectation of NCAA tournament or bust? Hashtag perpetual free agency. And yes, that's what it is. Thoughts on who will step up? I mean, Colin Smith is a guy that's going to have to step up, and I think he can. Ezra Mannion is going to have to step up. He's got to develop that jump shot we talked about. But for me, guys, the player that I think has to and probably will step up is Lee Dort. I mean, you know, if you look at Lee Dort, he's likely coming off the bench next year, but say an injury happens to one of the big portal guys they bring in, or one of the big portal guys isn't performing, then Lee Dort, it's up to you. I mean, I know QMB is there, but QMB is QMB, right? Like that, you know, you get what you get from QMB. But for me, the player that
hustle from QMB.
Yeah, the player that I think will and has to step up is Lee Dort. So that's who I would say. I mean, obviously you look at Colin Smith and Ezra Mannion as well, but at that position, you're replacing Liam Robbins. How do you do that? And it's going to be a team effort, right? From Lee, QMB, and another portal guy you bring in. But I look at Lee Dort as a big contributor next season because he's going to have to be. So that's how I would answer that. And I know there's other guys, but I think Lee Dort is the guy that comes to mind for me, especially because he's a post player down low.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit on the players that have to step up. I just want to pretend like Tyrin Lawrence. That's not even a potential,
right?
Because you can't. If he's gone this season, for better or for worse, like, not saying that the expectations for Jerry Stackhouse change, but the realistic expectations with the talent remaining on this roster if Lawrence is gone are bad. I mean, and unless I'm just completely missing something or missing some incredible transfers that we haven't heard about, or some incredible recruit that's going to come in and make an immediate impact as a 5-star true freshman, I don't see it. Now, the second part of the question, because you covered who would have to step up, is do the expectations change? And I think
I want to talk about this part. Yeah.
The answer is absolutely not. No, the expectations don't change. And there's one simple reason for that. You're still going into year 5 of the Jerry Stackhouse era. And college sports are different than professional sports because the college coach and his staff are responsible for the players on the roster. So having the excuse of the talent simply isn't there in year 5, or we had, lost a lot to the transfer portal or lost guys to graduation, that excuse works if you just had a successful NCAA tournament season. That is not the case. The expectations in year 5 for Jerry Stackhouse are still NCAA tournament or bust, regardless of who is on this roster. And if this team comes out and takes a step backwards after going to the NIT for 2 straight seasons and losing in the quarterfinals, or what was it, after a couple games or whatever it was in the NIT.
Quarters, yeah.
Like, you can't take a step backwards. You've set the minimum as being the NIT, and even that this upcoming season would still be a disappointment. So I think you've kind of set yourself up in a tough spot if you're Jerry Stackhouse, because undoubtedly this roster is going to be less talented, but the expectations are going to be higher.
I absolutely agree with that point. I don't think they should change. I think, to Will, what you said, this is just the trajectory of Vanderbilt basketball, and it's a good thing. It is a good thing to continually up the ante, continually be like, hey, we did this, like, let's go higher. Like, that should be the expectation for like sports programs across the nation. And I think too, Will, you said it great. If you change if you move the goalpost and be like, okay, well, Tyrin didn't come back, so let's settle for NIT berth. Then, like the hashtag said, perpetual free agency, we're in like a perpetual like whirlwind of okay, we finally make progress. Vanderbilt basketball finally makes progress. Lose some guys. We're going to take a step back. We're going to lower the expectations again. And then you just do this whole shindig over and over again to where like expectations get high and you're like, tournament or bust, make a run. And then something happens, then you lower it again. And you can't do that. Eventually change must happen to where you have to change the circumstance. You have to change the expectation to where, hey guys, we can't keep hitting the ceiling and then just being okay with bumping your noggin on the ceiling. You got to get past it. You got to make progress. You have to get to the tournament. You can't just keep saying NIT and then, oh, well, we lost, guys, so we'll go back to the NIT. Like, it's just that's literally like college basketball purgatory.
Right. The Vanderbilt standard is making the tournament. I mean, like, consistently making the NCAA tournament. That's the standard. That'll always be the standard. Right. And so we can't lose sight of that, and I like before this season, we said year 4, this should be a tournament team. And I will admit, because of some of the things that happened, whether it was a Liam injury or, I don't know, lack of gelling from the first part of the season with the guys, I'll admit my posts might have slightly changed, at least with his team, but it was still, you should still be on the bubble, and they were on the bubble. So that's the hard part for me. But next year, it is tournament or bust. I mean,
The
there's
leniency
no
we
question.
gave where we moved the goalposts, Billy, and I don't even know. I think they just hit like the basic minimum expectations that we had going into this year were like be on the bubble, and they were minimally on the bubble.
Yeah.
But part of moving those goalposts just slightly was with the statement of next year there will be no moving the goalposts regardless of what happens. So a lot of that had the caveat of, we may be loosening up on what we said earlier, but next year that won't happen because it's year 5. There are no excuses in year 5. There just aren't.
No.
That is enough time to have gone through an entire rotation of guys. And there are things about the transfer portal era that don't work in Vanderbilt's advantage. I don't think this has gotten enough attention. And maybe I'm wrong on this, but Vanderbilt doesn't have an undergraduate business program. Okay. That's kind of a big deal when you're talking about guys transferring around, because a lot of athletes are undergraduate business majors. And so when you're just talking about generally, if a guy has 2 years of credit in whatever business program, that's not going to transfer to Vanderbilt in the same way. And academically, I think that's a part that we don't think about often. And a lot of times that's treated as a joke, like people will laugh at that. But if it's different when you're talking about a university just not having that program of study, because they have a graduate business program. They have Master of Finance, MBA program, but undergraduate, that's just not an option. It's not like a requirement to get into the school. It's just not there. So that's a part of this that is not talked about, is that is a little bit of a difficulty that Vanderbilt could face. We've talked about the benefits of Vanderbilt having a very appealing grad program for guys to transfer into. But as far as undergrad guys, which seem to be pretty popular throughout the country now, 24/7 has a whole other ranking system for transfers now, which is crazy that we moved into that. But there are some obstacles that you don't see that I think Vanderbilt might be facing as well. They can kind of limit them on what kind of guys they can go after.
Yeah, we've got to remember that, and that's always been the case at Vanderbilt. Let's get to Kendall Richards. He asks, "What's the next step for Stackhouse and this program? How can we build off the end of season momentum and carry it into the recruiting season and the beginning of next season?" That's a loaded question. The next step is making a tournament. I mean, that's the next step. So, in terms of how they recruit, he talked about carrying momentum into the recruiting season. I don't even think that applies. The momentum for recruiting with Jerry Stackhouse does not apply, because we've seen he doesn't retain classes. I mean, he at this point, especially the last couple of years, has put his emphasis, and this is his decision. He's decided to go with it, but he has placed his emphasis on the transfer portal. And so, I don't even think we need to talk about recruiting momentum. And I could be wrong there. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe a guy like Isaiah West turns into a good player, but history has shown us Isaiah West might not be here in 2 years. Like that's how freshmen have acted under Stackhouse and have operated. So, how can we build off this momentum and carry it into the recruiting season? I think we need to shift that question into, what do transfer portals think of this program? Or what do transfer portal guys think of Vanderbilt right now? And that's a big question. I mean, you look at, okay, they just lost 5 guys, but they've got some pieces. They might like Coach Stackhouse. They like the Memorial Magic. So I think right now, guys, Vanderbilt is appealing, right? Like if you're a portal guy and say you're you have one more year of eligibility and you want to play at a high level, it's pretty damn appealing for, to go to Vanderbilt. And say you even have 2, but if you're an undergrad, maybe, as Will said, not as appealing, because if you want to go the business route or one of those other routes, it might not work for you because of the academic requirements. But at the same time, even for an undergrad guy right now, I think, that could be appealing. Say you have 2 or 3 years left and you want to come into a solid program. I think right now that where Vanderbilt's program is at could be appealing to guys. So I don't know where y'all are at there. The next step, I think we all agree, is making the tournament. How do they build off this momentum? Get big portal guys. I mean, it's pretty simple. Yeah. Like you've got to secure maybe I don't know if use the Anchor Collective, Anchor Impact, use NIL to whatever advantage you might have, but point to the success this season and tell guys, say, look at our gym in these home games and how raucous it is and the home court advantage we have. You can come play in Nashville. So how do they build off it, guys? How do they, I take away the recruiting part of that, by the way, because I don't think recruiting momentum exists under Stackhouse.
I mean, we're just in a different era. Basketball's always been weird because you had the one and done rule where guys were suddenly not allowed to, at 18 years old, go and play professional basketball for some reason. It worked out so poorly for so many guys. I mean, Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, I mean, those guys were just physically overwhelmed and their careers never developed. So thank God they implemented that rule. But basketball is, like you said, it's a transfer market now. But I'm looking at all the guys that have transferred out, and it's just kind of amazing looking at all the talent, guys that you kind of forget about that were on this roster. Looking at 24/7 Sports, and I've lost
DJ Harvey
now. DJ Harvey. Just think about guys that have come in that Stackhouse missed on. Taryn Frank, remember that name? I mean, the transfer portal is so odd and so new, and you're kind of just buying lottery tickets. You can get Ezra Mignon, you can get Liam Robbins, or you can have a Taryn Frank situation where a guy comes in and he's just not quite the player that you expected. But next steps, how do you build? Colin Smith has to take a massive step forward. That's the guy. I talked about him coming in as a true freshman that I kept hitting on this is the guy from this class. This guy's different. Whenever he described his playing style as Paul George, that's when I immediately knew. I was like, this guy is a different type of player. Yeah. He's got a very good view at a young age and realistic view of what his game is. And you saw him get so much better from beginning of the season to the end. If he can continue to grow at the pace that he did throughout this season, he's going to take a massive step forward going into his sophomore year with a lot more opportunities for shots on the offensive end. But building off the momentum, keep that phrase in mind. You kind of lost all the momentum that you had. There was positive momentum. I would say that that's kind of gone right now. And Billy, you hit on it. It's kind of like when CJ Taylor announced that he wasn't going to enter the transfer portal. The momentum will come back if Tyrin Lawrence announces he is returning, and the momentum will fade even further away if he announces that he will be entering the NBA draft fully. So it just keeps coming back to that decision.
There's a lot riding on Tyrin Lawrence.
This offseason just comes down to what's Tyrin Lawrence doing, and that is going to be news we are all eagerly awaiting.
He is the white whale of Vanderbilt basketball. Yep.
He's the guy.
It's a little Moby Dick reference for all my literature boys out there.
I love it. All right, Jacob Scholl chimes in. What's your transfer portal wish list? Man, we get to make up our Christmas list here, guys. For me, an unreasonable player, but I think a potential guy to watch, and call me crazy, Caleb Love. I
was going to say the same thing, Billy.
And listen, hear me out. He's likely not coming to Vandy, but he would be an example of a guy that I don't know if Stackhouse knows him or not, but he would be an example of a big name guy that we had no clue Vanderbilt could get. But Stackhouse being Jerry Stackhouse, as you've talked about, Will, I mean, he's Jerry Stackhouse. You start to think of a little bit of Deion Sanders type feel of, older guys know him, but I think some younger kids know that name as well. And he sort of rings a bell. So maybe Caleb Love.
He was in a Young Gravy rap song, for God's sake. That was like the most popular song on TikTok for a minute.
Yeah. Just show him that song. Be like, here's my TikTok song for you. But no, Severe Wheeler is another guy from Kentucky. I never thought he was that great of a player, but maybe as a combo guard with Ezra could fit in nicely. Damian Dunn, though, is the guy for me from Temple. Mm-hmm. I mean, he played with Stackhouse on his AAU team. Stackhouse coached him. He didn't play with Jerry. But Damian Dunn is the player for me that as a perfect fit, perfect combo guard for this team that I think would fit perfectly in between sort of Ezra and Tyrin. And then you look at it, there's a guy from Lehigh, Evan Taylor, that Vandy has. I think they made an in-house visit to him And he's a good player. He's 6'6". He would basically be a replacement of Jordan Wright. But guys, it's so weird. You mentioned the portal, Will. It's just it's not like football where you immediately have guys in your head like, oh, I want that guy who played really well at Tulane or wherever. Like basketball, I don't know. Like I know they have a list on 24/7, but even that isn't like, it doesn't provide you a whole lot of clarity. So I think an unreasonable guy for me is Caleb Love, but the reasonable guy that I think Vanderbilt can attain and can get is Damian Dunn. So I'm looking for him. In terms of post guys, I don't really know. I heard a rumor a couple of days ago about Vanderbilt has their eyes on a big post player. Don't know his name, but there will be players brought in. But who are those players? We don't know. I think Caleb Love is a pipe dream, but that's an example, guys, of a guy that we may not think Vanderbilt could ever get, but maybe they get a guy like that, a big name guy. Who knows? I mean, but I think money has to be involved. And I say that not in a dirty way, not in a Rick Pitino or a Calipari way, not in a direct cheating way, but a way of saying we're being aggressive, right? Like we're going to use every NIL capability we can, and we're going to get you here, and we're going to win at a high level. Like showing that, kind of dropping your nuts on the table and saying, listen, you come here, we're winning at a high level. We're getting to the tournament. And we're going to be a team like K-State this year and make that run. So I think money's going to have to be involved, as it is now. That's today's world, guys. Right? So it's a tough question to answer. I know, Will, we were laughing earlier about our list, and I don't know how loaded your list is.
No, there you go. The only names, you just named them. It was not an extensive list. The entire point of my list was to say it's crazy how opaque the transfer portal is compared to the recruiting market. Because before 24/7 Sports, I mean, you had some annual magazines or whatever with recruiting rankings, but generally it was very vague how good these guys were going to be, who was interested, what offers they actually
just
had.
rivals a scout.
Yeah, the transfer portal now is like that on steroids because nobody's taking official visits. Nobody's taking these, you don't see unofficial visits. They're not posting pictures with the gear on. I mean, all of this is just done, I'm assuming, through different text messages. I have no idea. Does anyone that's not directly involved in that market really know that process? I don't know. Because like you said, they have the list of different guys that are out there that have officially entered their name into the portal, but it's not really the same as the normal recruiting page that has a list of teams that are interested and where they're likely to go. It's not.
It's almost untrustworthy too.
Yeah, it's all you're basing it on is like these random guys with like 4,000 followers on Twitter will be like, this player has said that he's interested in these
these 15
teams.
schools. Yeah,
and you're like,
Miles
oh, that's
Studi.
Yeah, and so it's all just he said, she said, and I think at the end of the day, like you're just gonna find out when they announce themselves where they're headed. I think that to an extent that's kind of good, but there's no centralized database that clearly shows, teams that are interested and teams that are potentially not interested.
Other than the actual portal that coaches have access to, and we don't.
Yeah, other than that, that's the opaqueness that we're referring to. So I think it's kind of wait and see for us, which is not exactly the position we love to be in.
I think too, Billy, I'm right there with you. Dunn is he makes the most sense. Vanderbilt obviously needs a big. One guy I really like, Nelly Jr. Joseph. He's not a 5. He's about 6'9", so he would run the 4. Iona Gales averages 15 points a game, 9.3 rebounds a game, and shoots 55% from the field. He is currently in the Nelly Jr. Joseph.
What a name. I don't trust you on that, by the way.
That sounds like a Vanderbilt basketball player to me. He's someone that I would like for Vanderbilt to look at. I know we joke about the tweets that say this player has heard from these 4,500 schools, and you're like, what do you mean by heard? Like, what do you mean by they've been in touch? Like, remember Miles Studi originally retweeted that tweet, and it's like, 37 schools have been in contact with Miles Studi within 30 minutes. You're like, what does that mean? Like, what do we mean by like in contact? Like they liked his Instagram photo, or they're like, what? But apparently Vanderbilt has been, like, air quotes if you're watching or listening for a little added effect, in contact or has interest in this guy. So take that for what it's worth. Vanderbilt needs a big. I would really like him. Caleb Love, it's not going to happen, but that feels really steamy to me.
Yeah,
I would absolutely, I would love it.
It's kind of fun to think about.
It is. Oh God, Caleb Love in the black and gold, dude.
Whew. Adam on Twitter, kind of with this conversation, he said, "Do we realistically have a shot at big time portal guys? And what about UNC guys? Anyway, Stack can spin his UNC ties to get the transfer guys from there." Hard to be overly optimistic going into next season, even though I'm glad a couple are leaving. I mean, I think to answer his question, yes, I think Vanderbilt does have a realistic shot at high-level portal guys. I think yes. Now, they could get here and we're like, who are these guys? We've never seen them play before, but we've had that with Ezra Manjon, and he turned into a pretty damn good player. So in terms of Stack spinning his UNC ties, I don't think that'll work out with Caleb Love, but maybe with a guy from UNC. There's a guy at Kansas. I think his name is KJ Miles. He didn't get to play a whole lot this year, but he's from North Carolina. You got to believe any player from North Carolina, may want to play with a guy like Stackhouse who played at North Carolina. So I don't think we put too much stock into those though. All right, let's roll through here. We got a few more. I think this is a good one from Justin Kemp. They won me back with the run at the end of the season, but the goalposts can't change for next year, right? I know we got to that. It's going to be NCAA tournament next year, and no leaving it to chance to get it. Do enough through the year that there's no doubt. Yes, I agree with that. It actually wasn't that one. It was the next one. Realistically, from Miller McKee, how many points per game have we lost in the portal if Tyrin comes back? So he's saying if Tyrin comes back, how many points per game have we lost in the portal? We're going to have to do some math on that and get back to you, Miller. But kind of right off the cuff, Will, I think you're the guy to get to here. I mean, Malik Dia, he averaged what, 2?
You said it was they would have lost 59 of their 72 points. And what did Tyrin average? 15 or 16, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was right around there. So do the math there. Not a whole lot, though, right? It's
59 of the 72 points are gone, minus, we'll say, 15. So that's going to be 44.
Tyrin averaged 13.1 a game.
Okay, 13 a game. So 46 is what you're going to be losing. 46 to 72 points per game is still quite a bit, even with the returning of Tyrin Lawrence. So you still have a lot of points to replace. But the only points that I think are irreplaceable are Tyrin Lawrence's. Like, I think the things he provides, the difficulty of shot that he hits on a regular basis when otherwise the possession was going nowhere, you just can't replace that. Yeah. So he would be the entire, pretty much the main focus of every single team's defensive game plan going into every single game next season. He has to be back, man. I know we've said that a lot, but the more that we've discussed it, the entire weight of next season is pretty much resting on that.
Yeah.
I've said it like 5 times. I'm going to keep saying it.
That's what it rests on. All right. Art Goldfinger, last one. He's got a couple. Is it more likely that Vanderbilt will pursue grad transfers as opposed to undergraduate guys? I think that's a good question. We touched on that a little bit. And then he says, when will you have Art Goldfinger on the pod? I would love to have Art Goldfinger on the pod.
Oh, what a great person that would be to have on the pod.
I feel like that'd be just an iconic conversation with him. I don't know how old this guy is, but if he's 30s, 40s. I mean, I feel like that'd be a pretty iconic.
He did a pod with the dudes over at the Hustler.
Really?
Yeah, like very recently. Yeah.
Wow, we need to get him on then. Yeah. We have to get him on. We'll get you on, Art. We will get you on, Art.
He was a great listen, which that pod is already like a great listen. Like those dudes do great things, but he was funny, man. He's obviously hilarious on Twitter.
He'd be up there with one of the best guests if his insight is just as good as his Twitter content. But all right, is it more likely though? I mean, what do you think, guys? I don't know that this matters a whole lot, but I do think there's an added effect of getting a grad transfer as opposed to picking up an undergrad guy that might have 3 years of eligibility left, and you haven't seen a ton of tape, right? Like an undergrad and a grad guy might have a lot more tape, and you might really know what you're getting in him. In terms of an undergrad guy, you look at him, you're like, I don't know what he's getting. He's got potential, but I need to see a little bit more on film. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I think I say no. My gut says no. But then again, right, like they need to win now. So they might try to pursue older grad transfer type guys, right? Like a Jordan Wright type of guy who has been at a program for 4 years and done a lot, but he wants to play at a high level school and win and get into the tournament. Does Vanderbilt go after that? So what do you think? I mean, I know we talked about this a little bit, Will. I think it's easier. I mean, academically, it's easier to get grad transfers as opposed to undergrad. But I don't know. I think I don't know how to answer that. My gut says no, because I think undergrad guys a lot of times have a little bit higher of a ceiling. But then again, you got to win now if you're Coach Stackhouse.
I think that it's unique for Vanderbilt because of what we said about not only just the graduate programs they offer. It's like basically, I could be wrong, like a 50-50 split of grad and undergrad students at Vanderbilt on an already relatively small student body, especially compared to other SEC and other power conference schools. So I think in a weird way, yes, like ideally Vanderbilt does have more opportunity and can be more appealing to grad transfers. I think that might be like a niche market they could capitalize on in college basketball. But I think it's more the things that prevent them from pursuing other undergraduate guys. I think that just that program of study thing, I don't even think it's academic standards. It's just having a private elite academic institution and transferring those credits in from non-private elite, non-elite academic schools, and just not even offering certain, majors, paths, majors at that university. I think the grad track maybe is something that Jerry's looking at, but at this point, with how many guys they've lost and how many open roster spots, at a certain point, it's kind of take what you can get. And I don't know, that kind of sounds bad, but how picky can you be with this many spots to fill currently, especially when you have another one up in the air with Tyrin, is you have to get some experienced guys in here just as bodies. I mean, you're pretty weak at that 3 and 4 position. You have no depth. Everyone is gone at the 3 and 4 spots. So something has to happen, and it needs to happen relatively quickly. So, I mean, we're still, the NCAA tournaments, of course, still going on, but hopefully this staff was kind of prepared. Like, this hopefully did not blindside the Vanderbilt coaching staff. I would be pretty surprised if they didn't have a little bit of a feeling that some of these guys that as fans on the outside we were surprised by. I would say the coaching staff may have known this was coming, or at least had an idea of it, and at least made plans to fill those holes that were going to be left. Now we will see. That's why it's so hard to give that right now, because there's so much to happen and so much roster turnover. This roster could look completely different, a couple months from now, and the entire expectation could be different.
And real quick, Trev, before you go, Aria Gerson kind of cleared it up for us. Arik, his first question was, does Vandy allow any undergrad transfers for student athletes who will be rising seniors? The answer to that is yes. They allowed Ezra Manjon before this season. And Aria said it's not that it isn't allowed, it's that the player has to be willing to potentially lose a full year of credits, as Manjon did, and may have to take summer classes to catch up. So undergrad all of a sudden looks a little bit tougher. And I think that's reasoning as to why Vanderbilt has had a little bit of trouble with those undergrad guys. And so maybe like I said, right, Will, like grad transfers appear to be easier to attain. It's not like undergrad guys are impossible, but it's just with like, I don't know how many guys would want to catch up on all those credits and take summer school.
Well, if you have the degree and you're entering a whole new program of a grad school. So like you're basically starting from scratch all over again. So it provides a lot more flexibility for the university to work with you. If you're transferring in it's written in what transfers in and doesn't. I wasn't working directly in admissions at Tennessee Tech, but I was working a lot with those people and seeing the emails. It's just kind of black and white what credits are going to transfer in and transfer out at a public university. I'm assuming Vanderbilt basically has the same thing, just a way higher standard of what's going to transfer in. So there's not as much flexibility now with the grad school. That's where old Deermeyer and Jerry and Candace Lee and McClellan can, not bend the admission standards, but, help out the guy, make sure he's filling out everything correctly, getting it in front of the right people, all that stuff. That's what they can focus on with the grad.
Grease the wheel a little bit.
Yeah, you have that option. So that's why I think
for Ray Davis, apparently.
That's like I said. Yes, you do. I don't think Ray Davis wanted to play. I don't think Ray Davis wanted to play at Vanderbilt and was able to use that as an excuse to transfer to Kentucky. And I think that is generally what it has been in the past, is local guys that don't want to stay using that as an excuse. Like you said with Ezra, he's going to have to do some extra work, whatever, take a summer class. And they're like, nah, Vanderbilt didn't let me in. So I think that's probably the scenario that was Ray Davis. And hopefully they're able to grease the wheel, as you said, Billy, for some of these transfers.
Sorry, Ray, you got hell to pay in the fall. It's Cheek Smith season, baby. But I don't have anything to add. I just have a question. I could totally be blanking right now. Has Vanderbilt taken any graduates in the portal under Stackhouse? Am I totally blanking and missing somebody obvious, or has it all been undergrad?
I want to say it's all been undergrad.
Okay.
I'm trying to think though.
I mean, Q, Liam,
I think
Ezra.
I think DJ Harvey might have been a grad.
Oh,
maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not sure though. But no one of note, right? Like no one.
That's what I'm thinking. No
one that just pops out at you. And that's rare. I mean, to find an elite grad transfer like that in college basketball, that's kind of rare. So yeah, that's a good question though. I think that'll be something interesting to monitor with Stackhouse and okay, how many undergrads does he get and how many of these guys are grads? Because obviously from what we've discovered, attaining a grad transfer is a lot easier than attaining an undergrad, but we'll see. I mean, they're going to have to do what they got to do. 4 scholarship spots are open, and we're going to get some news in the next month or so, guys. I mean, it's going to be fun. Because if these guys are big name guys, and then with the guys that come in, you have Tyrin coming back, all of a sudden, some of that sorrow, some of that pain from the end of the season, the way it ended, starts to change a little bit. So long, beefy episode. Little baseball, little basketball. Again, baseball is at the Hawk this weekend against Georgia, 3-game series. And that's it for basketball, guys. No more basketball talk other than the transfer news. I'm sure we'll be touching on them. A lot of baseball coming up, but stay tuned for more Door Reports. You've been listening to another episode of the Door Report powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors.